Welcome to the report for Tiger Mountain, ladies and gentlemen. We're going to talk about Trump and Jeffrey Epstein. Best friends or no? Stick around and listen. All right, ladies and gentlemen, tonight we're going to talk about Jeffrey Epstein, infamous billionaire and mischief maker, and Donald Trump, another famous billionaire, who's causing Mr. Trump a lot of trouble at the moment. Obviously, one of the things that Trump has gone on about, particularly Trump supporters, is the Epstein files. People have been suspicious of Jeffrey Epstein from Trump turn one. It was a big issue. And Trump, always wants to drain the swamp, and people have long suspected that Jeffrey Epstein was an agent of intelligence. I mean, as Tucker Carlson said recently, obviously, most likely Mossad, but there might have also been some collaboration with CIA, maybe even MI5, who knows? The chickens have sort of come home to roost to some extent. And for whatever reason, it appears like Trump and Kash Patel and Pam Bondi have really looked into the files. And I think they've come back to Trump with something along the lines of, well, you're in them, So, how could that be? Obviously it could be that, he was actually... he did something inappropriate. I mean, he did hang out with him in the 90s. I mean, it was clear that Donald Trump was being courted by Jeffrey Epstein because that was essentially what Jeffrey Epstein did, is he was courting the rich and famous so he could blackmail them, obviously having Donald Trump as an asset. Look, considering how Trump is an extreme Zionist in many ways and pretty much lets Bibi get away with whatever the hell he likes, maybe that it succeeded. But the weird thing that I find surprising is that why didn't his political enemies use it why didn't Hillary use it and why didn't Biden use it? So now Trump is calling it a conspiracy theory similar to the Russiagate, which obviously I don't think is true. It's not really that similar. But what I think is probably happened is that the Biden administration, when they realized they were going to lose, or they realized at least they could lose, they thought, well, if Trump is going to release the Epstein files, let's, poison the well. Well poisoning is one of their favorite activities, of course. So they thought, well, why don't we just create artificial documents, fake things, and put them in the file about Donald Trump? And there's probably some real stuff in there where, Epstein is contacting Donald, wanting to, woo him. I've read a couple of books on Jeffrey Epstein, so I know a little bit about the case. Probably the best one is written by this guy Bradley, somebody who was a lawyer for one of the victims, Jeffrey, and about another 20 or 30 of the victims. And he really looked into the case and wrote a very, very good book about it. And it's just extraordinary case. They've got that Mark Epstein, which is the brother of Jeffrey Epstein, running around, doing media at the moment. Now, Mark Epstein, as far as I'm concerned, from the two books I've read, was definitely involved. He owned like this, I don't know if he owned it, but he was like I don't know what you call it, like the guy, the supervisor or the master of ceremonies over a block of flats where he would keep these 16-year-old girls, these 15-year-old, 14-year-old girls. So Mark Epstein was sort of like like an assistant to his brother. If you've read the books on the topic like I have, he's deeply involved in all this. And, Jeffrey Epstein's, kind of modus operandi was to, find successful people like Prince Andrew and then, compromise them. And now it appears like with Prince Andrew, he did compromise. I believe Virginia Jeffries about what she said. I believe, he probably slept with her. I'm not entirely sure that Prince Andrew knew she was, 16 or 15 or however old she was. But see, that's the whole point of the honey trap is that, he had, 20-year-old Victoria's Secret models hanging out with him all the time. So if you were to sleep with a 20-year-old Jeffrey Epstein, associate, it's not illegal. It's not doing anything wrong. And I imagine even Donald Trump would be down for that. But see, the whole point is that, you're sleeping with a 20-year-old and then the next night they say, that was a great weekend. And the next night they slip in the 15-year-old and then they've got you. They film you and they've got you. That's the whole purpose of the operation. That was its function, okay? I don't think they got Trump that way. I do think they probably got Trump sleeping with a 20-year-old who maybe hanging out with Jeffrey Epstein. And if that's in the files, maybe, that's all it is. And Trump doesn't want that getting out. So, this is, I think, what's going on. And also, too, I think, Trump is also covering up for probably a lot of people who are his allies who are in the files. Obviously, they're, the Democrats, will be, severely compromised. And we all know that Bill Clinton went to the island, more times than you can count on all your fingers and toes. So, he went there again and again and again. And there are many other people like Kevin Spacey. Kevin Spacey's calling to bring them out. You know what I mean? He's got some kind of, probably because there wasn't any boys on the island. You know what I mean? He might have been got away with it there. So, look, it's all a gigantic, mess and a miasma. I think I've called it in another report. But I think that's what's going on. I think there's some kind of forged documents that have been inserted that have made, Trump, nervous about releasing them. Also, too, there's a deal is possibly being touted with Ghislaine Maxwell. Now, that could be interesting because Trump could use that to his favor in the sense like he could say to Ghislaine, look, I'll shorten your sentence. I might even release you. I'll give you a pardon when I want to leave office. But like, you got to go, name my political enemies and don't name me. You know what I mean? And obviously he would be worried about, Ghislaine Maxwell naming him. But I don't think she'd be that stupid when he's the president of the United States because he has the power to pardon her. So, there could be something going on there. And other people within that, obviously there's the whole Q movement, which is, pretty freaking crazy by now. The mass arrests of all these globalist criminals are coming every week, and that's been coming every week for, about 6 or 7 years now since the Q thing first appeared. I mean, I think Q is basically a lot of nonsense. But, there are people that think that Trump is using essentially this blackmail to, drain the swamp, clean out, whatever. There might be some of that going on behind the scenes, but in my personal opinion, if the Department of Justice under Kash Patel and Dan Bongino, until they really make arrests and, Pam Bondi and that, you see serious arrests taking place, to me, it's all fictional, and is that the case? Is this, people have always said about Donald Trump that it's like a show, and I mean, obviously I'm a Trump, and if anyone has watched this podcast knows I'm a Trump true supporter, ladies and gentlemen. So I don't believe that. I think Trump, is legitimately doing great things that upset the globalist cabal, but he's certainly doing things that the Zionists like. But I imagine, in my opinion, I see that as a quid pro quo that he's doing with, the Zionists. He's essentially saying, look, I'm going to give you free reign to do whatever the hell you want, but I'm going to save America, okay? Because there's two parts of what I call the globalization agenda. Globalism, which is to destroy our nations and to make us all into global slaves. And then, of course, there's to build the Jewish ethno-state in the Middle East and to expand it into Greater Israel. And, it's like left and right. The globalists control the left wing of politics and the Zionists control the right. And, if you look at our mainstream media, that's exactly what is going on, right? And then you look at all these kind of podcasts. Obviously, this is a minor one compared to like Joe Rogan and all these kind of people. So, you've got Jordan Peterson, you've got many influences on the right, But, a lot of these kind of people have received tremendous popularity and they've become way more influential than someone like Steve Colbert or all these Tonight Show hosts that are now getting sacked, thank God. So there it is, ladies and gentlemen. I may be going on a little bit longer. I've got my little mic here today. So, that's making me very talkative, ladies and gentlemen. So here we are. So that's the Trump and Epstein. That's my take on that. And I believe there's some forged documents that are making Donald Trump nervous. And he's also probably covering up for some of his mates. Because while the Democrats are implicated, I'm sure half the Republicans are implicated as well. Look out, Ted Cruz. That's it.